Now, let's turn to the situation in the Middle East. And about 130 lorries carrying humanitarian aid have crossed into Gaza this week after Israel eased an 11-week blockade. The UN's World Food Programme says it's now a race against time to stop widespread starvation. The Palestinian Health Ministry says 29 people have died in Gaza of starvation-related deaths this week. But Israeli officials say there is no food shortage in Gaza at this time. Israel says about 100 aid trucks entered the Gaza Strip yesterday. Before the war, about 500 lorries a day went into Gaza, bringing food, medicines, baby food and medical equipment. That number dropped sharply when the war started. Now, UN bodies estimate 600 trucks a day are required to begin to tackle Gaza's humanitarian crisis. Let me just tell you that we are expecting the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres to give an update on the humanitarian situation in Gaza pretty shortly. We think that's going to be getting underway in New York, and we're going to bring that to you live as soon as he begins speaking. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister has accused the UK Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, of, in effect, supporting Hamas. It's after he joined the French and Canadian leaders in condemning Israel's expanded military operation in Gaza.
I say to President Macron, Prime Minister Carney and Prime Minister Starmer, when mass murderers, rapists, baby killers and kidnappers thank you, you're on the wrong side of justice. You're on the wrong side of humanity.
Benjamin Netanyahu there. Well, let's speak now to our correspondent, Wira Davis, who's in Jerusalem. Wira, hello to you. Benjamin Netanyahu's criticism of Sir Keir Starmer has been described as blistering. Of course, Keir Starmer has also condemned the killing of that young Jewish couple in Washington, D.C. as well. Why do you think the Israeli Prime Minister is responding in this way to the UK leader, the UK traditionally being one of Israel's allies?
That's because the United Kingdom, France and Canada, who Mr Netanyahu grouped together, have been robust in recent days about their criticism of Israel's decision to expand the war in Gaza and the impact of the war and, of course, the lack of food and medical equipment on the humanitarian situation in Gaza. And that line that Mr Netanyahu used there, do not be on the wrong side of history, that was echoing the British Foreign Secretary David Lammy when he criticised Israel quite strongly in the House of Commons earlier this week and used that phrase, warning to Israel not to be on the wrong side of history. So yes, three of Israel's traditional allies, the French, the British and the Canadians, coming under strong criticism from the Israeli Prime Minister. But, you know, Israel has been backed into a corner by many of its international allies because, and Israel risks, I think, becoming increasingly isolated internationally. There's been criticism too from the US, perhaps not in the same words, but the Americans, the President Donald Trump and Foreign Secretary Marco Rubio have both in recent days expressed concern, certainly about the humanitarian situation in Gaza. So that perhaps is what preempted Mr Netanyahu's extraordinary words. We've had a response from the French, a French government spokesperson, Sophie Primas, said, "We do not accept the accusation," and added that President Macron's response was very firm. So yes, some pretty tense relations between the Israelis and some of their traditional allies.
And Wira, bring us up to date on what you're hearing about the distribution of aid in Gaza, because we have heard about some pretty chaotic scenes around that aid.
Yeah, well, look, it is, as I was saying, the humanitarian crisis is one of the reasons for the criticism of Israel. Israel has now relented and allowed some trucks into Gaza in recent days through a crossing in the south of Gaza, not in the north where aid agencies would like it to come in. But at that Kerem Shalom crossing, I've been there a couple of times in recent days. Some trucks are getting across with very basic food aid, with flour. Problem is, once it gets to the other side, because of the scarcity of food, because of the uncertainty about how much is getting on, that aid aid is subject to attacks and looting. And the World Food Programme have told us that of the 90 or so trucks that went in yesterday, at least 15 were attacked by armed gangs and looted. What we understand is that then Hamas policemen or armed Hamas guards then tried to accompany that aid to its destination. Israel, as it had warned, then apparently subsequently attacked some of those armed Hamas fighters. Israel accuses them of looting the aid. Palestinian sources say they were trying to accompany the aid to its final destination. Several people were killed on the ground, and that has meant that some of the drivers on the other side, some of the Palestinian companies driving the aid to its final destination, have now stopped doing that because of the danger on the other side. It's a very, very murky situation. It's a very dangerous situation, and it means that certainly not as much aid as the UN has intended is getting to its final destination in Gaza.
OK, Wira, thank you very much for that. Well, let's speak now to Ahmed Broy, Media and Communications Advisor for the Middle East for the Norwegian Refugee Council. Ahmed, thank you very much for joining us on BBC News. I understand the Norwegian Refugee Council has around 60 staff in Gaza at the moment. What are they able to do? What can they do there right now?
Not much at the moment, except for very critical life-saving support, such as providing water for people. We have been, even with the full blockade we have actually provided around 100,000 people with clean drinking water, but those numbers keep going down because of the deep shortages in fuel in particular. We are providing some education support for children. We are providing some baby items for children, but I mean, I can tell you this is scratching the surface with the the scarcity of items. We have enough aid waiting outside the border to load up to 200 trucks, and we are waiting for our turn. We hope that the opening of the aid crossings is going to be sustainable, and it's going to last, because we have had 81 days of zero aid coming in, and you see the results on the screen.
But is the Norwegian Refugee Council prepared to work with the Israeli plan to deliver aid? My understanding is that you don't agree with that plan.
No, we don't agree, and with us, almost the entire humanitarian community. And
you've said, haven't you? Sorry to interrupt, Ahmed. You said that it violates the essence and application of international law and humanitarian principles. Just set out for us in a bit more detail, if you would, what precisely you mean by that.
Of course, the plan is to install through all 4 hubs to distribute aid in Gaza, which means that people will have to go to those places in order to receive aid. Of course, this is loaded with risks, and of course, the distribution of these hubs makes it, very hard for people to reach aid. It means that people will have to walk miles probably before they can get their loaf of bread or bucket of water. It's also, it will coerce definitely people to move from one area to another. The other issue is, of course, what happens on the road, and our basic logic of military being military purposes overseeing the aid delivery is a big red flag for us. We can't. I mean, we have been independent in our provision of aid all this time as a community, and we don't want aid to be linked to any political or military purposes. Aid in Gaza has been politicized for so long. It's so dangerous to now militarize it, really, and link whatever military aims that Israel has.
But given the conditions, the catastrophic conditions that the Norwegian Refugee Council and other aid agencies are telling the world about in Gaza, do you think there is a situation where principles are one thing, but the need to get aid to people becomes the driving force, that you might work with this plan that the Israeli government has put in place in order to get aid to people who need it?
No, I don't think so. And the reason why is because there's tons of aid that in the existing mechanism has worked. And you see it has worked in the ceasefire. When Israel, hands off, it opened the gates, it let people, receive aid wherever they are. this plan that Israel is now devising exposes people to screening, exposes people to dangers of whatever transport methods they are using. I mean, people can't even afford a donkey cart in Gaza. How are they going to walk on foot for miles? I mean, what are they going to face on the road? So for us, really, frankly, it's a non-starter, and we have our mechanisms, stringent principles, stringent, I would say, rules that we operate with, and Israel knows where this aid is heading. There's coordination that happens with the UN. So I think this is distracting us from doing our job, which is to save lives and give to people who really need that aid. And, these tactics should stop, actually. This story, I think, distracts from the fact that our people are hungry and there's so much food waiting across the border.
OK, Ahmed Broy from the Norwegian Refugee Council, thank you very much for joining us on BBC News today.
Thank you.